Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first episode of Indie Creator Exchange for the calendar year 2025. It's already February 2nd, so we missed January. But Kurt is going to introduce our first fabulous guest, and then we're going to get into an interview about his career and his products. So, Kurt, take it away.
Well, I'm going to let Aric tell us more about him than what I probably even know. But I have been following Aric on Instagram for quite a
And
while.
what's that Instagram
He
handle,
was
guys?
It's at space.fart.
Space.fart on Instagram. Okay. That's
links will
memorable.
be in the links will be in the description for anything that we do discuss and everything. But I am super excited to jump into what your indie comic book take is all about, and obviously your humor is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
So Aric, just give us the short rundown on who you are, how you get into it, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on here. I really been looking forward to this a lot. And of course, since we started talking, I've been doing a deep dive on a lot of your episodes, and I really enjoy what you guys are doing. As far as, from the comics angle, what you guys are doing and the YouTube angle, I think it's great. And it's
Thank you.
something I might want to emulate myself in the near future. But I really think it's great that it's out here. So thanks again for having me on. Much appreciated.
No problem.
Um,
So yeah, could you just let's go back. It's your kid, and you're in that impressionable era. And what are you
I'm not hearing
noticing in
anything.
the world that's going to eventually bring you into this career, this avenue?
Um, yeah, you know what? I was thinking about that, and I'm not one of these people that the first time I opened a comic book, it just blew my mind, and I was set from life. I had a few comics as a little kid, but I think when I look back on it, what first really sold me on comics as a storytelling medium was 1982. I was 9 years old when the Conan the Barbarian movie came out.
Hmm.
And my dad took me to see it, and it just that blew
Damn.
my mind. Like, and to this day, it's
Yeah.
still my favorite
Yeah.
movie. I watch it a couple times a year. And shortly after that, I don't remember how, but I got my hands on the Marvel Comics adaptation, and it again just blew me away. And I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute," because I just loved the story that was told in the movie. It literally took me to a different world. And then here I was holding a different version of the same story told in a different way, and I fell in love pretty instantly after that, and kind of quickly became a full-blown collector because I was going to a lot of antiques flea markets and stuff like that with my dad, and I noticed that a lot of them had old boxes of comics around, so I just fell into it pretty quickly. So by the time I'm 10, 11 years old, I'm a full-blown comic collector, and that was in the mid 80s.
Okay.
So Dark Knight's coming out, and DC's doing all kinds of cool stuff, and Marvel had been doing all kinds of cool stuff. So I jumped into it pretty quickly right there, and yeah, I just fell in love with it as a storytelling medium. And
Okay.
I'm pretty typical. I've seen a lot of people with the same experience as myself, but I kind of fell out of it for decades. There was always a little piece of me that still loved
Yeah.
comics, but I stopped collecting for decades,
Yeah.
and I might hit a comic book store once every year, once every couple of years. And the pandemic hit. I started deep diving in all the MCU movies and watching comics videos on YouTube, and the fire was relit. And basically, here I am again.
Right.
Yeah.
When we're all stuck in the pandemic, we're trying to find something that really makes life worth living, so we don't get depressed.
Hmm.
And we a lot of people rekindle. I mean, some people learned how to play an instrument. Some people started writing a novel. Everybody found their own kind of like a creative pursuit inside themselves,
Jake,
which
I'm losing
is
sound on you.
interesting because. that it took a breakdown of society, to have that happen. I just want to back up a little bit more. So,
Sure.
going through school, were you into any? Was there any art training or anything like that? Tell us about your education, and then what you're doing for work all these years.
Yeah. So I did a couple years in the Navy after high school, and I was always drawing. I was always amongst my friend groups. I was always the kid that drew, and liked drawing. Was pretty good at it and stuff. Um, I didn't. I was kind of directionless out of high school, so I didn't really jump right into college or anything. And like I said, I did a couple years in the Navy. I got out, and I still didn't really know what the hell I wanted to do with myself. So tried college a couple times. Eh, didn't really stick. But I was still drawing and making art, and by that point, I was reading a lot of alternative and underground comics and stuff, and started drawing that kind of stuff and messing around with comics in a little bit in that way. Um, at the age of about 27, I got sober, and I did. Besides the putting down the alcohol and stuff, I decided I wanted to make some other changes in my life, and so I decided to give college a real try.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of at the time. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do in college. So I just was like, I'll just get an art degree. I'm good at art. I like it. I'll do that. So I always laugh. I went into college with a warehouse job, and I got done. I kicked butt in college. I did really well. Just a little older. Actually wanted to be there.
Yeah.
Um, did a studio art degree, so it was kind of not focused on one discipline. I did a little painting, drawing, a lot of
What
life drawing,
school?
some sculpture.
You want to plug the
Uh,
school?
it's Montclair State University out here in New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in Southern California, but I moved across country a couple times and found myself, eventually settling down out here in New Jersey. Um, yeah, so I'm like, I went into college with a warehouse job, and I got out of college with two warehouse jobs. So it's been, as far as my art career, quote unquote, it's been more. I've never made a living at it. Let's put it that way. I do it for my own pleasure. I spent a good 20 years painting, doing sculpture, this and that, some illustration while I was in college and after I got out. And that whole time there was always a little fire in me. Like I always thought I do eventually want to sit down and actually just do comics. And so I finally, like I said, when the pandemic hit, I finally made that decision to just focus on comics. And that's all I've been doing since then, basically. And
Doing what you want to do. That's great.
yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah. So, are you so now Space Fart? You got number one and number two. Thank you so
Hmm.
much for sending us copies. These are really
Absolutely.
good.
Thank
I'm really like enjoying the substantial print quality of these. Right? It's full
you.
color.
Yeah.
Paper. You
You know
really.
what? I'm so happy to be doing this now. Um,
Yep.
I feel like, in a way,
I froze
this might
there.
be putting it a little strongly, but it's kind of like a golden age as far as people being able to do their thing how they want to do it, printing wise.
Yeah.
And, for a relatively small amount of money,
Yeah.
I was trying to do some comics like 20 years ago, about 1999, 25 years ago, geez. And I remember looking into the process, how much would it cost to actually make a comic, something like this, and it was so crazy expensive. And now I can do micro small print runs,
Yeah.
25, 50, and it's like a couple $100.
Right.
I'm like, I can scrape together. More of it is just I got to do the work to put the content together. That's
Right.
the hardest part.
That's a great point. Printing and all of the options that you want for short runs is completely available. Um,
Yeah,
I just printed up 30 copies of Turbo Pit Fighter for like $118, including shipping.
yeah,
So, um,
it's amazing.
yeah, and that's great. I mean, and it's kind of the same way that publishing has come to the individual, over the last
Hmm.
couple of years. You could have a blog, you could have a social media account, you could put out your own book, on
Hmm.
Substack. There's all these different venues for that.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's great to see the creativity emerge here. So, what's your first kind of like official published piece? Is it something pre Spacefart, or is this going to be your first like endeavor?
Yeah. I think, yeah, like I just alluded to, I did self-publish a comic, 2 issues of a comic in 1999 and 2000 called Death Fart. When I was thinking of what am I going to call this new thing, I was kind of thinking maybe I'll just do Death Fart Volume 2, but I just decided on this, on Space Fart.
Right.
Um, and then there was, so I didn't really do much in comics. I mean, I made comics for myself. I didn't do much putting them out there
Uh-huh.
for about 20 years after that. And like I said, I just concentrated on painting and stuff. And that's just where my head was at for those years.
Same story. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. And I mean, there's times I look back and I'm like, man, I wish I would have just stuck with comics, because who knows where I could have been by now. When I look at it logically, though, I'm like, well, life takes you where it takes you. You do what you do. I feel like being a little bit older now and having all that practice, I feel like a better artist.
Yeah.
I feel better able to tell fuller, complete stories with layers. Because a lot of the stuff, when I look back on the 25-year-old stuff, it was 1 or 2 pages where there's a couple of guys doing some stuff, and then there's a punchline in the last panel.
Right.
And I'm like, it's a little shallow. So I'm trying to,
Expand on that.
layers of stuff, basically.
Yeah.
Better story.
Yeah.
Who's influencing you, Aric?
Say again?
Who's influencing you?
That's a good question. I love thinking about that.
Can I jump in, because just from
Sure.
the outside, I see,
I got a laundry list.
I see a little bit of Mark Marek from the Raw collection. I don't know if you know that name, but he's got a distinctive style that's like
Yeah.
purposely like chunky, and
Mhm.
I also see like some of this painterly stuff. I see Joel Coleman a little. I don't know,
I'm not familiar.
but yeah, that was just my first blush. What do you got?
Right.
What's the real deal?
So, visually, artistically, I'd say the biggest influences on me have been like Dan Clowes and
Mhm.
a lot of the alternative and underground comic cartoonists from like the 80s and 90s. That was, I think, where I really kind of, I just gelled around them. They really struck a
Yeah.
chord with me. Rick Altergott
Yeah.
and his Doofus comics, huge influence on me.
Yeah.
Peter Bagge, of course. I like Charles Burns.
Yeah.
Johnny Ryan, another one. I read and enjoy, and
Yeah.
it's like not everything's a home run, and that's with any artist. Not everything's a home run, but when they do hit it, it's out of the park. And I'm looking at stuff and just trying to see things like look at the way he's doing that. Look at the way that's being drawn in such a simple manner. I should really try to do a little more of that. It's funny with influences. I look at some stuff I'd done 15, 20, 25 years ago, and I'm like, wow, I was reading a lot of 8 Ball then.
Right.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
really trying to be Dan Clowes, and I'm not Dan Clowes. So.
I want.
Try
How
not to
about
let
Robert?
what
How
I
about
mean?
Robert Williams?
Oh, I love Robert Williams. Yeah.
Yeah,
His paintings. I'm
I
not
see
familiar
him
with a lot of his
yeah.
cartooning stuff, but his paintings are amazing.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Robert Williams. We have a character now called Chromita, which to me it's like a challenge to draw some of the chrome, and he's the only guy to look to for like challenging chrome in his
Yeah.
But what about Kaz? I also see a little bit of Kaz Underworld.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton of his stuff, but definitely. I mean, again, and he's someone I would look at with the art and the storytelling too. Overall, and that goes for all of them. But who else is a big influence with me has been Dennis Warden, who did Stick Boy.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you got
Oh wow.
with him,
Okay.
but again, with him, it's a very and just a very simplified drawing technique, but really effective and consistent. And then you add in the way he writes and tells the stories and the dialogue his characters use. And I'm like, yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And you know, I've had things I've read in some of his comics where I'm like, I read it and I'm just like, man, I think he spying on me. He took that right out of my mind. You know?
Yeah, it's deceptively simple. You think like, oh,
Yeah.
Sick Boy, right? It's a cop out, but there's
Hmm.
plenty going on. There's a lot of value on the page
Yeah.
with that.
I just wrote a little essay. Some friends and I are doing a zine here, be coming out in a couple months, and I wrote an essay on the first issue of Stick Boy, and I kind of keyed in on some of that too, how deceptively simple it is. When you look at it, there's a lot of using simple hash marks to denote a night sky or
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
crusty looking couch or something, and it's really good and effective. And not that I'm,
It's like a
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's a purification of the comic book language. Like
Yes, yes.
there's always, there's always this. We all experience, I think, as artists, as we're growing up, this hypertensive. It has to look like this in order to be sold as a comic book. It needs
Hmm.
to read as a comic book, and there is a good chunk of truth in there, especially when you're dealing on a commercial
Yeah.
level. But when I went through your comics, you're touching in and out of these same types of spaces. In other words, you have your own. It's like you have your own personal struggles,
Hmm.
and then you have your own artistic struggles, just like anybody else. But you have this sense of humor, which then has this like compression going in there, and I just find a lot of like chance taking that ends up paying off for you. Do you feel the same thing happening for yourself in these stories?
Yeah, definitely. I think that was a good way to surmise it with the, you know, humor to me in my own work and in my own life too. It kind of brings everything together. And there is like, you said it really well, where depending on the type of comics you're talking about, you know, they got to have a certain level of a type of realism and, or it just doesn't work. You know what I mean? You couldn't
Yeah,
have an issue of Amazing Spider-Man come out with Dennis Warden as the artist without it
right.
being an ironic statement on the
Yeah,
state of comic books or something. Like it wouldn't just be
yeah,
a serious issue of the new Amazing Spider-Man. You know what I mean?
yep,
Um, and I really do take a lot of influences from both sides of. I love both sides of the comic world. I don't buy a ton of mainstream stuff nowadays. Um, but like on social media, on my Twitter and on Instagram, I follow artists from both sides of it, and I really appreciate the art form of it, even if it's a title I'm not really interested in investing much time in reading. So I do like to. I tend to find myself in between there, like you said, and it's not really something um, I'm setting out to do consciously ahead of time. Maybe a little bit, but it's just this feels the most natural to me to have that blend of a little bit of realism, but also some stupid humor in there too, and a dick joke once in a while. You know, like
yeah,
Right.
it just it's where I feel comfortable. You know.
yeah. Well, comes through.
Yeah, so we definitely see, I definitely see the influence of a lot of classic people that came before. I noticed you have kind of a combination of like multi-page strips, but there's also kind of like some single-page strips here, right?
Hmm.
Um, were you a big fan of the National Lampoon comic strip section? A lot of interesting people came out of that.
Yeah, I read them. In my early teen years, definitely. I was just telling some friends about what did they have? I remember a fart glossary, and I don't remember who drew it. God, I wish I could remember. But
A fart
my
glossary.
friend and I were talking about comic book sound effects and how certain ones have just stayed with me for decades. And in this National Lampoon fart glossary, they had these little figures. It was mostly text, but it was cartooning around the sides of the text. It looked like an old Mad cover or something. And there were these little figures making fart sound effects out of their butts, and one of them said "sus," and there was another one that was "fuff," F-U-F-F, and it just killed me. I remember being in tears when I first read that, and it has stayed with me for decades. I think it was 15 when I read that.
Yeah.
So that brand of humor has definitely been a big thing. Monty Python.
Yeah.
I like smart silliness. Basically is what it comes down to. If somebody can be silly and smart,
Right.
that appeals to me. I'm a big Norm Macdonald guy.
Okay.
I think, when I try to look for things that influence me outside of comics, comedy is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Uh, to me, that guy is just. I only need one on Mount Rushmore, and he's the guy.
Yeah, he was definitely irreverent, and
Mm-hmm.
it was risky sometimes, very
Mm-hmm.
risky sometimes. So,
Yeah,
but then after a while, I mean, as soon as I see him, I just start laughing because
you could just look at him sometimes,
yeah,
and
it was always like he had this connection with the audience where the venue is like this gatekeeper, and he's not going to be allowed to say, what he really wants to say, but
mm-hmm.
you could feel, you know, that he's gonna break the envelope, he's gonna get in
Yeah,
trouble, he's gonna do it, because, was really reaching, the end user, and that was a very interesting thing about him, it was that
yeah.
it eventually, got him thrown off the air and Saturday Night
Mm-hmm.
Live and all that. Um, but what a funny guy, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Hey, Jay.
What's that?
I'll go ahead and finish your thought. Aric, finish your thought,
oh,
please.
I was just going to say, it seemed like a lot of times there was an inside joke between him and the audience. And you're right, the medium was the gatekeeper there. And you could just see a smirk, and
Right.
you knew he wants to say more, and you kind of know what he wants to say, and that was enough.
Right, right. And he was also one of those guys where he knew how to use like pregnant pauses, and
Oh, my
he would
God, yeah.
like, the timing would be like,
Yeah.
wait and wait and wait, because when he finally has his view on something, it's like explosive, right? So that's a good call, yeah. What's up, Kurt?
So I'm going to go to how does Aric promote his comics?
That's a good. I haven't mastered that yet, and it's
Who has?
right. Exactly. Basic uh, social media stuff. You know what I mean? Like
Just Instagram?
Instagram, Reddit here and there. Reddit has a couple. There's a couple subreddits. I haven't figured out a way to get a ton of customers at this point, and it's a good thing that I have a day job that I've had for 23 years, and pay all my bills through that. So I'm not dependent on this to make a living in any way, shape, or form, and I can do it
Right.
because I love doing it. And I think that adds to the product, basically. Like
I
I'm
mean,
not trying to figure out what the audience wants. I'm
we
just
hear
like,
the same answer every week, or every time we do this. It's
yeah,
like it's such a struggle right now because everybody's in their little silos. Like,
yeah,
when the pandemic happened, we all went into our own little worlds, and
hmm
now we're trying to find each other. Now that
yeah,
things are back open again, and how do you get this into the hands of somebody, especially in an age where the shipping costs more than than the printing.
Oh,
You know.
it's insane. Yeah. I've had, I did a Kickstarter for issue 2.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm one of these people, and I know there's a lot of other cartoonists and artists in general like me. I don't like self promotion. I hate it. That's the part of this I hate. And like, I just want to put pictures of my stuff up, maybe explain what it is a little, maybe not, and go on with my day. Doing the Kickstarter, it was very small scale. I think I raised like $600 or something, and that was fine. But still, even with the small scale, you got to promote. You got to promote. You got to post on it multiple times a day on different platforms, and you know they give a little advice in there when you're doing your first campaign. I don't know if you guys have done one, but it said like take advantage, like put this in front of your friends and family, and if they will help you out a lot too. And luckily, I do have some generous friends and family that pushed me over the top. So, I haven't, again, like I said, I haven't found a silver bullet by any means. It's a shame because when I first got on Instagram, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago, it was amazing. And I was able to, like, just from being on Instagram and posting pictures of my paintings, I sold paintings. I got into a couple gallery shows in New York, pop-up shows all over the place, met so many cool artists. And I don't know whatever was done to that algorithm or the algorithm itself introduced to it, but it's a shell of what it used to be in
Yeah.
terms of getting your art out there.
Yeah. It's
You know,
well, yeah, it's a victim of its own success, Instagram, because
yeah.
as soon as they see a big foundational group of people in any categorizable thing, they'll just like, all right, how do we monetize the shit out of this and
Mm-hmm.
exploit it?
Yep.
So
And it goes
Eric, Eric, are
anything
you?
making
Oh,
waves
go ahead.
gets
yeah,
commodified, and I understand it, but it sucks. And I keep seeing all these different alternatives for Instagram and for Twitter and stuff, and I'm just like, none of them. I don't know. None of them have that spark so far, but I'll keep trying.
yeah,
Well, there's no more with social media. That what the real complaint is that there's no more organic reach,
Yeah.
and the only possible way of reaching anybody now is the networking and kind of ganging up. So
Yeah.
my question is that are you affiliated with any other kind of publisher or anything like Spread Love? Are you familiar with Spread Love? And
Yeah. I love
they
that.
sort of have their own little network and are able to kind of boost a book, and
Mm-hmm.
it's in that same uh, um, genre,
Mm-hmm.
that humor genre,
Yeah.
because you are dealing with a particular style of humor,
Mm-hmm.
but the generous thing that you do is you put it right in the title, so it's not like anybody's going to be like, oh, I didn't know it was just going to be a whole bunch of this kind of work, but the kind of curiosity that I have for you is there a way to like almost like lift the humor like into like a YouTube channel where you might be just sort of like reading the like, for instance, like your first issue is a lot of one pagers,
Yeah.
sometimes like double pagers in the bag, but like the Rafferty, you might want to just go through the Rafferty, and then just cut the panels out and then just have yourself talk over it. It could only be like a minute long, but it could definitely, and then throw an ad at the bottom of it saying, you can get a copy of the comic here. But it's like, I'm concerned for you in trying to lend yourself promotionally by the art. It's
Mm-hmm.
only, you know what I mean? And that's really all what an Instagram is.
Yeah.
But your humor is on another level. Like it's not weak. I just to be straight up, like it's really it's funny stuff, you know, but
Thank you.
you got to get in there and you got to read it. So have
Yeah.
you done, do you have any groups like you said Reddit? Are you on any kind of humor groups or anything like that?
Um, I don't know about humor in particular, and I think you're onto something there. And I have, getting a YouTube channel is one of those things on the list of things I've been thinking about doing. That's a really good idea, actually, though, with the breaking up the comic into panels and
Yeah.
just different voices for them, I guess,
Yeah,
huh?
there's something they're doing now called motion comics, right? And Marvel and DC are experimenting with it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like yeah, you bring the person through it, you make a video out of it. You have the ability to put music beds in there, which really like heighten the drama or the the zany feel, whatever you're looking for. There's also all these million of different AI voices now.
Yeah, yeah.
That's always interesting. But it's basically just it's reading, bringing the person through it, little by little as a sample because because it's a audio visual medium. When everyone's just scrolling through apps and you want to just like catch somebody, right, and
Mm-hmm.
have them pause there, then if there's just like one panel, two panels, three panels, you'll catch a lot of people. They'll be like, all right, where's this going to go?
Hmm.
And and if it has a payoff, then you send them off, to your call to action. And so that's an interesting thing. I mean, you also, I'm reading these things. You also have this kind of like vibe where it seems like maybe you try your hand at sketch comedy at some point because the National Lampoon people they had those comic sections, they had funny articles, but then that kind of turned into SNL and Second City
Mm-hmm.
TV and stuff like that where they all ended up being like zillionaires. So
Yeah.
it might be another format, but if it's about characters and scenes and stuff like that, maybe that's another angle to try in between comics.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and it's funny you mentioned sketch comedy because when Kurt was talking about what he was talking about with the reading through the comic and breaking up the panels and stuff,
Yeah,
that thought did cross my mind. I'm like, you could have a comics YouTube, but why not throw a sketch on there once in a while? Like
yeah.
a variety of content.
And your voice is
The thing I always see, the thing I always admire about comedians, um, and you hear it in their interviews all the time, is their comedy is made on standing up
Yeah.
every night in
Uh huh.
front of an
Yeah.
audience
Trial
and
by fire.
getting pummeled.
Mm-hmm.
like like anybody who thinks becoming a comedian is as easy as
Oh,
is just completely
no.
off their rocker. Because and the thing is the reason they're so successful, or these comedians that are out there are so successful, is they make their way through that gauntlet,
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and become addicted to it.
Yeah.
So they're addicted to the feedback loop, where
Yeah.
most of us want to hide. So we
Oh.
all want to go, no, oh, no, don't criticize me. I know I'll do better. I'm sorry, but just please buy my, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's always, but that's what really, really cuts out. And it's like, I think when you were saying the Norm Macdonald thing, I mean, even way before, he passed away, his talk show would come up, like clips on it and everything. And I don't, it's almost like it doesn't matter if you like the guy or not, or his sense of humor. If you get caught for about 3 minutes and him just sort of babbling along about something, he's trying to make a joke,
Yeah.
you're there with him. So
Mm-hmm.
that's
yeah.
more of a
Norm
win than
Norm was
just
the
just trying to.
he was the comics comic.
Yeah.
So the other question, Aric, or a deeper dive in it, do you consider yourself more of a comedian, or a comic book artist? Like who's higher on that level by maybe 1 degree? If it's only 1 degree, and you had to choose at the end of the day, would it be
That's a
just a
great,
comedian or
yeah,
a comic book artist?
great question. I'm going to go, I don't know if I would say comedian, but for me, a comic is made up equal parts art and writing. Okay. And part of why I really gravitated to underground and alternative comics when I did, it was just that it wasn't the assembly line of the big, mainstream comics. So
Yeah,
you're seeing what came out of this person, art and writing. Um, the older I get, the more I realize. Well, let's put it this way: I was always like 80% art, 20% writing, and the older I get, the more I feel like it's not quite reversed, but it's probably 60-40 writing. And that goes as
yeah.
far as my own stuff too. The comedy aspect of it just comes out that way because I have a sick compulsion to make jokes, to make everything a joke. My wife sometimes wants to punch me in the face because we'll be talking about somebody that has cancer, and I'm like, oh, is it cancer of the balls?
Right, right.
Um, I just something stupid. Like there's a picture, and I tell my wife, I'm like, I cannot help it. I'm not doing this on purpose to make you mad, although that makes me laugh too. I enjoy that part of it too. I can't lie, but I show her there's a picture when my grandmother was in hospice care on my mom's side. Her 4 children, my mother and her 3 siblings, went to visit her, and I don't know if this was their last visit with their mother or one, but it was within the week before she passed away. And they're all around her, and here's my uncle off to the side, slyly going like this to the camera. And I see that, and I'm like, that just it
Yeah.
explains. I That's in my blood, and
Yeah.
like when I write, I don't think I'm capable of doing something serious. I want to laugh. I love the idea of making other people laugh. I had it's been one of the best parts of making these comics has been people telling me they're funny. I've had
Good.
people tell me they're really funny, and that warms my heart so much.
Yeah.
I had a guy, I did a tabling thing 2 years ago, and there's a story in the beginning of Space Fart #1. I think it's the first Rafferty story I ever drew, where he's in a bar with another guy, and yeah, that one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The original art was actually drawn on on 5x7 pieces of paper because I wasn't sure if I was going to make a comic book or if I was just doing something that people could scroll on their phones, right?
Yeah.
So now I've got this portfolio on my table with the original art, and I see this guy looking through it, and he gets to that page of the portfolio, and I see his eyes moving over the panels of that story, and I could see him kind of smiling. He got to the penultimate panel, and he's kind of smiling, and then just burst out laughing out loud in the last panel, and I'm just one of the best feelings in the world. He ended up buying a comic,
There you
and
go.
Oh, of course.
the
Of
more important
course.
part for me was that reaction and laugh that he had. I was like, that just
Yeah.
made my year, man. And the reason I don't say, well, comedian rather than writer, like you guys touched on it earlier about the gauntlet of fire that comedians have to go through. And I don't know that I could deal with that. I mean, you see the value of it, of learning to carry on through rejection,
Yeah.
failure, stuff like that. And if you keep carrying on through that and getting through it and learn how to, in their case, learn how to tell a joke. In our case, it might be like learning how to compose a comic page. So the whole thing is one successful piece, and then the individual panels are a successful piece. And, we have to fail to get better. And I look in those issues and I'm like, there's stuff that fails,
Yeah.
but I learn
Well,
from it.
it's like the kind of idea is like that, like Instagram Reels or TikTok or something like that. In 30 seconds, you could be showing scraps of piece of paper for a joke, and then post that reel. and then you could just keep doing all your one line, your one
Yeah.
pages, or if it's a two pager, it's a little longer. It doesn't matter, but you could
Mm-hmm.
go back at the end of the month and you could see which one got the most likes.
Yeah.
And so then you're getting but it's not that it's a completed idea yet. It's just the core of your art and value, from my perspective, is as a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I would be like, oh, you should go out and do stand up. It's way more about playing that same kind of
trial and error.
The trial and error kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing in honing not only your skill, but also the people who gravitate to that similar type of sense of humor. And we all know that senses of humor now can be a death sentence in society.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
Oh, yeah.
you definitely seem to be one that is definitely, you're definitely walking towards fire. And that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't see Alex, I don't see you I don't, being shy or upset if other people, were upset about, said joke.
Yeah.
But, I just, thank you for sharing with me on that.
This is fun.
I'm just very curious.
It's interesting. I love talking about this. I don't get a chance very often to really just let it flow.
Yeah.
And really think about this stuff. But
What's the timing here? So this comes out when, and this comes out when, and what's coming out next?
Okay, so number 1 came out in, I think, summer of 22, I believe. And that was comprised of, there's stuff that I did, well, actually in both of those issues. There's stuff that I did over the last 20 years. And once I finally joined the 21st century, got an iPad, got Procreate, I was able to take a lot of the stuff I had drawn in pencils or inks up to that time and then just never did anything with it.
Right.
Thank God I saved ages.
Yeah.
But I was able to take a lot of that stuff and sort of redraw some stuff, rewrite, fix it up, and put it in these books. So a lot of the stuff in the first issue is like really the original dates are anywhere from 2005 to 2022. Number 2 came out last October 24. It's mostly new stuff. There's a couple older things in there that I reworked, rewrote a little bit, but a lot of newer stuff in there too. And then as far as what's going on now, I got a couple irons in the fire. I have a 10-year-old son, and I'm working with him on a story. I kind of wanted to do something he could read too, because a lot of my stuff, I'll tell him, I'm like, wait till you're like 14 and you can read this one. This one you might want to be 16 or 13 on this one. So I feel kind of bad, and I'm like, I spend so much time by myself doing this stuff. I'm like, let me involve my son a little bit. So he and I are coming up with this whole world we're working on, and it's got the humor. He inherited the humor bug too, so it's got the humor in there, but it's also got some action. It's got family stuff in contemporary times, and then it's sort of interspersed. There's a connective story in big, an epilogue and a prologue and an epilogue, and then a connective story in between the family stuff that's got this post-apocalyptic thing, and I'm working on tying it all together. It'll be a while before that's out, but it's being worked on. And then just some stuff here and there, getting ready for Space Fort number 3. And,
it's coming in the wind.
One of my big things is trying to get it out a little quicker without sacrificing the quality. So
right.
I don't want 2 years from now.
Right. So no announced timetable for that, but you're just on the way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So what's your take on the future of comics, Aric?
That's a great question. And, to be honest, I really have never put that much thought into it. But I think there's always a place for comics. If they have survived until now, there's always going to be a place. I see all this stuff, comics are dying, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I go to my local comic shop once a month, twice a month, maybe. And there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comics out there.
Yeah, it's so much.
Big publishers, small publishers, self publishers. Most of them aren't going to last 50 issues or more, but they're still out there, and there's an audience for them. I think myself and everybody else ought to be really, just making sure. I guess I'll just speak for myself, and it's my intention to just make sure I can easily format my stuff to be read digitally.
Yeah.
That's really it. It's a shame. I don't know if there's ever going to be where the ability to put comic books, floppy comics, in a grocery store again, and have it mean the same thing it meant to us when we were kids.
Right.
I think that world is gone with video games and stuff. There's so many other things that have kids' attention, but there's still, I don't know, there's still a place for it.
So it sounds like you have a comic store near you that you get out to, and it's kind of like a routine. You go out into
Yeah.
the world. You actually walking, doing things.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a decent comic store, or is it like a franchise or something?
Oh no, he's great. It's a local. It's just a regular, just a guy that owns it. He and I have become friends. I'm actually the story I'm working on now is actually set in his shop, and
See that?
he's in it. So he was thrilled. I showed him a picture. He's like, "Oh my god,
Right.
that's amazing!"
Yeah, that's great. We need more of that. I
Yeah.
live in I'm in Nyack, New York, and we just
Mm-hmm.
lost a comic store here within the
Oh,
last
that's
couple of months. Yeah.
tough business.
What's that?
Tough business.
It is, and you think like people selling on Whatnot and people selling on eBay, could like help out, but if that's the case, then why do you need the storefront, right? If
Yeah.
you're not going to do the walk-in, um,
Mm-hmm.
so now I have to go to the mall, and there's a franchise there, and it makes me
Mm-hmm.
nuts because it's like the worst treatment of comics ever. They're all like in these two racks, and you can't even see them. You have to like bend down in weird positions just to see stuff, and
Yeah.
and it's all just Marvel and DC centric. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm dying to get down to Forbidden Planet again. Every time
Mm-hmm.
you're in Union Square area in New York City,
Yep.
people should go to Forbidden Planet. They
Absolutely.
have all the greatest indie comics right there on the shelf. You can
Yep.
see them before you buy them. Give good prices, But that
It's a shame there's not something like that in every town. You know what I mean? And as much as I say, oh, there's always going to be a place for them, uh, it's not always. I don't know. Like we said, it's a tough business, and we will see shops come and go, and
yeah,
it's a shame, but I don't think it's dying. I just think there's, you know, shrinking and expansion and shrinking and expansion, and hopefully, I'm 52 now, and hopefully, I'm not amongst the last generation of true comic book diehards. I don't think so.
right. Yeah, hopefully people realize, society realizes that we need retail and that it pays to keep it around, and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like comics, feeds into the imaginations of a whole generation of kids that are discovering stuff every single day. But
It's just such a fantastic storytelling medium, and the combination of art, visual art, and words. Um, I do wish we took it a little more seriously in this country. I had a guy in Sweden buy 2 copies each of those of Space Fart 1 and 2 from me, and we talked a little bit. Talked about shipping. That was about $35 to ship them over there.
yeah,
Whew. But he took the extra copies and donated them. I guess right by where he lives, there's a library that's dedicated to comics and graphic novels and stuff. And
wow,
Oh wow, wow.
so I just was scrolling Instagram one day and got a notification that here's this museum in Sweden that's got a couple, got Space Fart in it. And I'm
Nice.
just thinking to myself, like, Sweden, France, I know they do, Italy, Spain, they take comics seriously as an art form a little bit on a higher level than
well,
we
you should
do.
see Japan.
Yeah.
But
Japan,
America,
Canada.
we're driven by the almighty dollar, and
Hmm.
it's very very hard for distribution now, and
Yep.
for small retailers, mom and pop, right now. We're gonna have a retailer on pretty soon, who's got a lot of great insight. There's some people that are doing fine right now
Hmm.
in retail, uh,
Yeah.
but not by me, not in New York. I mean, Jesus Christ. So, I guess it depends, and people can get stuff through the mail for better or
Hmm.
worse. And the cons are important now because
Yeah.
I might bring home 50 comics from a con,
Hmm.
so it's well worth getting to.
Yeah, that's one area I'm looking to increase on this year. I got one book for April. There's what's it called? Super Jersey Comics Expo. It's down a little bit in the southern half of the state. I'll be doing that. I had to pull out of one because I got the flu about a month ago.
Yeah,
It was death's door, so I wasn't going to go to that. But
tough one.
other than that, yeah, definitely get out there, network.
Yeah, and you could also every time you're traveling, you could drop into shops and show them your wares and stuff.
That's
But
a great idea. Yeah.
it would be better if there was a network, a distribution network.
Hmm.
So that's always the tough part about the business.
Yeah, that's the big thing, the distribution. And like I'm on a couple of group chats on Instagram with other cartoonists and stuff. And like you guys said earlier, you get the same answer every time you ask this question.
Yeah,
And we're all the same too. Like it's we're all like I don't know. Maybe we should really put our heads together and start a distro or something. But
yeah, that would be smart
yeah.
if it was able to happen like organically.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So let's head on to the last segment, which is the whole exchange aspect of indie
Absolutely.
creator exchange podcast here. You have a copy we sent you of Turbo Pit Fighter,
Hmm.
and what Jake and I love to get is feedback, and that can be in any form that you wish. So let us have it, Aric.
I was very, very, very impressed with this. I saw it. I mean, I've seen it on your guys' Instagram feeds, and it caught my eye there. Um, and then watching a couple episodes, Nathaniel J.K. He's in one of my
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
chat groups, and I watched his interview on here. When I remember at the end watching him go through this, I'm like, wow, that looks good. And seeing it in person, reading it, I was blown away, man. You guys have done some really, really great work here. Um, I think if you go back to the first page, there's a certain thing I see creators do, setting up that world uh, without, show don't tell. You got to tell a little bit, but you're not beating me in the head with exposition there. It's mostly showing me this in what is it, 7 panels, 6 panels, 7 panels. You're
Yeah.
showing me a post-apocalyptic world, oppression, people in hiding, violence, all this stuff, and this is the last panel right there. I just by the time I get to that, I'm like, okay, here's our main character. This is where she's from. This is her background, the hell she's went through. That's just the storytelling aspect of it, and I'm like, all right, that kicks ass. They did a hell of a job just setting up and putting me in the story. Then you get to the art. I was like, it just looks different. It's really good. It's expressive. The figures are very expressive. There's movement. I love the angle of that panel, that big splash page on the next page in. Yeah, just fantastic, man. Now, uh, so Jake, you're doing pencils on this, and Kurt, you're doing inks, right?
yeah. That's what's happening every Sunday on our podcast where we do it
Yeah.
live, the making of, and it's interesting to see, as a penciler, what happens afterwards, because
Hmm.
it changes a lot, and it's kind of an old fashioned process. A lot of people nowadays, they not only ink their own stuff, but then they color it too, using digital
Yeah.
tablets and everything. So we're very much a throwback, and
Hmm.
and also staying with black and white is a choice too,
Hmm.
because Kurt's the master of the gray tones,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he's doing a lot of weird stuff, over there with frisket and masking and all kinds of tools. So it's it's an adventure. Like, the pages that I'm penciling right now, I have no idea what this is going to look like when it finally comes out, right? And
Yeah.
it's a little adventurous in a good way, but Kurt also is encouraging me to to save the pencil versions too, and with to do all kinds of, like, special variants and stuff.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it's old fashioned pencils, old fashioned inks on paper, and then going onto the printed page. Definitely.
It's phenomenal. I think you guys. Like, I'm excited to read the full story whenever it's released. And I think also format wise, putting out that teaser is a really, really good idea. Because you have it
Thank
at a
you.
low
Thank you very
price
much.
point that to just get people in. Because what you're doing is so good. Um, I'd hate, it would be a shame to have to wait until I don't know how many pages this is going to be total. You know,
Wait.
64 pages or whatever to wait until the very end when you're done and then have to try to get people in. Like, I think it's a fantastic way to bring people into you a little bit and get a look at what you're doing because it's really great. Now, Kurt, I had seen on previous episodes you'd mentioned that gray you get something with graphite. I can't remember what it was.
Water soluble graphite.
That's it. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at the trick is, I have a I don't know, it's a reaction to stark black and white, like the
Hmm.
stark line of, like, unless you're going to sit there and little and noodle and all that kind of stuff for texture and everything.
Yeah.
I just have played with, and it's a painting technique, and you might be
Hmm.
familiar with it, where it's like you get all of the heavier marks on the canvas, then you put that like a layer. I
Yeah.
don't want to call it layer on there, and then you just start wiping out
Hmm.
the
Okay.
highlights. So, and
Yeah.
those types of things. So I'm just doing it in a flip where I'll scan these pages at this point, then I'll come back with liquid frisket, which are in pen forms. As a matter of
Mm,
fact, I've been experimenting. I just got these Japanese ones, so I'm kind of
cool.
excited. This is like the third type, and then and also paint out areas. And what happens now is that I have the white of the paper still held by the frisket. I've got the black of the ink line held for the darkest areas, but now this gray neutralization comes in, and now I get to play, and that's
Hmm.
what I want to do. Like,
Yeah.
I am completely done with trying to make what everybody has come to terms with as a comic book page, an inked, excuse
Hmm.
me, as the comic book inker comic book page. And I love black and white, so I'm going completely to a black and white printing, and we can go from there. And one of the things too, it is a reaction to other black and white comics I've seen over the years, where I know for almost 100% certainty, without doubt, the artist as the inker part made it hoping that someday it would get colored. So there's that
Hmm.
black you always see
Yeah.
sometimes in black and white comics. So it's a natural reaction to me to not want to have people feel that way. You got a black and white comic book, here it is in black and
Yeah.
white, and
Yep.
in all of its glory. But and I'm also into like variant versions of the interior pages. So just like Jake said, um, I'll be picking up issue 1 to scan from Jake when we go to IC3 in March. We have these 80% pages, which we could do like a color screen, one color screen. We have my obvious values, pencil, grade values and everything to that extent. So when we do get to sell the first issue, there'll be already 3, if not 4, variant interiors.
Yeah.
Not only just the variant
That's
cover
cool.
bullshit, and trying to get you to buy the same comic book 4 times. You know what I mean? Like, get 4 copies of the comic, because each of the interiors is like a processing in its own approach and everything. So
yeah, that's cool. What are your plans as far as release date? Are you gonna do a crowdfunder, or are you just gonna put it out yourself?
I'm still.
There's two answers. So Jake gets his answer, then I get my answer.
Right.
Go ahead, Jake.
Once we have this thing compiled, I'm still holding out a very, very small chance of, excuse me, of finding, a publisher that might want to, that we might want to get into a deal with. If not, then I'd be very happy to self-publish with Kurt, and we would have some interesting takes with with variants, but we're on a pace right now where I'm penciling maybe a page every 3 weeks, something like that. I don't know. We just got the flu recently, so we took some time off.
Yeah.
Kurt, as you can see, well, I don't know if you saw Kurt before, but he was inking a 2-pager that's going to be in an anthology. So sometimes sometimes we make steady progress on Sundays, and then sometimes we kind of take a detour. But we're on a pace right now to finish Turbo #1 inks within years, not months. I would say like maybe 2026 might be the earliest that you would see, because it's 28 pages altogether, and we're taking our damn sweet time. The good news is, is that I'm producing #2 all in pencils as we're going, so that's going to be, in the works. And then we also have the Substack, where we have all the sci-fi content with the whole world that we're building, and that's all being created. So we're using kind of like our talking time, very valuably, as we're drawing, and and we're still day job guys. We're a couple years away from being retired.
Yeah.
But once that happens, my plan is to go full time, and I'm planning on having a lot of fun with it. And I don't know what Kurt's answer is as far as timetable, but I think we're on the same. I think we're we're basically just on a regular schedule for Turbo Comics, and when it's done, it's done.
Yeah, I agree completely with Jake, and the only thing that I want to lean towards in your question, an aspect of your question, Aric, is like the whole, how do you bring it to to the public, in the way of like whether it's a Kickstarter and stuff like that. Now, my day job is actually, I do online marketing for other artists, and I also run a couple of my own online businesses. So I'm a huge it's not like do it all yourself, but there's enough that you can do in preparation. #1 is to have your own website. That's super huge in my book, and like any client that I end up signing up, that's the whether I'm going to work with you or not, because the speculation is you cannot live off of Instagram, because it's changed. It's going to change again. You can't live off of TikTok. You can't depend on other people's platforms for your sustainability going forward. Also, I did a comic book called, and I have, this is my own project, which is Conan the Barbarian, and I did Conan Collected, which is 140 pages of black and white goodness. And I did a campaign on Instagram called Can Crom Sell 100 copies without Kickstarter. And the whole thing is that I have, over the last 2.5 years, have been studying indie sales of comics ratio of how many people buy and how much money they will spend. And right now it's 54 people is the average, and they will spend, including shipping and handling, around $32. So I marketed myself down to a point, well, if I could sell 50 comic books at $20, including shipping and handling, I should do all right. And I ended up selling 73. So there's way more ways of going about it than just kind of the quote unquote platform methodology.
Yeah.
The other part of it is Jake and I are working with Alex Turbin on an anthology Turbo World base place. And that's where that 2-pager kind of comes into play, where a version is going to go to Alex, and then we'll still have a version that can go into our anthology, because the next 6 pages have to come out that have been completed, which would be pages up to page 18. So 13 to 18, and you'll see that. So once we hit 28 pages is the first issue for being inked. We're going to have a lot more in the way of content, and I've kept myself here spread because Jake is also just being Jake in the writing and the expanding upon the ideas and bringing in things and, constantly moving. So I've set him up with a Substack, which is a very nice place. And it could be something for you as well when it comes to just writing jokes, jokes. It doesn't, you put a little, like I said, all these little doodles. I always say, Jake, stop trying to make art. Just keep the doodles coming. Just keep the doodles coming. Keep all this wonderful goodness coming. Get it out there. Tantalize people. And you'll see some growth and go from there. I'll tell you this, and I have been letting this anxiety out. I'm a little scared of our first issue release, no matter how it comes out, because by the time, and Jake is correct, I would anticipate the beginning of 2026 next year, we would be releasing issue 1. It being so anticipated was going to bring a lot of anxiety. And then, of course, there'll be that sort of burst of excitement, and then people will be reminded, oh, yeah, these guys only work on it every Sunday. So we got to wait another what? It'll probably be almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years for us making the comic every Sunday, which I also take so much pride in. Jake and I have got a history, so I can't just put this on a like a laissez-faire kind of thing. But Jake and I have personalities that really collaborate very well, and it's probably one of the reasons why very, very, very few creative people are doing exactly what Jake and I are doing, because we're trying to encourage other people to do the same thing. Keep yourself on point. Promote yourself at least once a week. Show off what you're working about. Talk about it. Tell it. Build a little community around. Go live. It's just all these types of things. But we just recorded episode 143. Making Turbo Pit Fighter. So I it's almost like that has more pride for me than making the comic book. Like the physical, getting the comic book done is just that pride of being able to stick with something, stay on point, not get so pissed off at Jake and quit, all that, all that kind of stuff that can come through with being in collaboration with another artist.
Yeah. I mean, if you're putting 140 episodes together, you got something going there.
Right. Well, Kurt always says, Jake, relax. Because, he goes, the value is going to be the podcast, not just the comic, right? And, especially once the first issue comes out, it'll be getting into people's hands, and then people will want to go backwards. And, they're not going to binge all these episodes of us making it, but they might check in.
Some people will.
Yeah, and they might, they might fall into our comics that influence. They might fall into our interviews, and basically, just be part of the community. Another,
It's really smart. Like, you guys really got me thinking, and you remind me of what I see in the indie comics world. Like I said earlier, I follow a lot. I see a lot of great artists on Instagram, a lot of great cartoonists. I see some on other platforms that are better at being YouTube promoters for years, building up an audience, just talking shit, right? And then 5 years after they've been doing that, oh, I'm going to do a comic book now. And now they already have 100,000 people following their YouTube channel. They're starting from that. And then I see these fantastic artists on Instagram starting from zero, building up. Like me, I built up 1,100 followers on Instagram, out of which I get like 15 of those to buy my comic. It seems to be a little backwards, you know. Now, I'm not going to put away the comics and then just do YouTube stuff for 10 years and then go back to comics.
Right.
I'm a little old for that. But
Right.
I really, what you guys are doing and talking about is eye-opening for someone that's not, you know, I think it does show the value of building that community, building that audience. And it might, I don't know your guys' numbers or anything, or I'm sure it's tangible. Like, you must see the value in what you're doing in tangible numbers. You know what I mean? But I don't know. As far as anxiety, like, that's totally normal. But you guys are, I'm not just blowing smoke up your asses. You guys are, this thing you guys are doing is awesome. I had so much fun reading it. The art is, I think, it doesn't look like anything else I see out there, you know, with the grays, the way the figures, a lot of them, they remind me a little bit of Grant Wood paintings.
huh.
They move,
Oh, wow.
you know, they got this form of movement to them that I just really love. There's details, little details all over the place. The logos, there's everything I'm looking at on this thing. I'm like, this is kicks ass. And these guys deserve to have 1 million followers out there, you know, like,
Okay.
it might, you know, maybe you don't set the world on fire immediately when this thing comes out, but hopefully you are doing it the smart way as far as putting together a foundation. And when it does come out, I bet you're going to do better than when the first issue of Space Fart came out. You know what I mean? Like, you got a little solid ground to stand on. And a year, that's not bad. Like, if you were telling me it's going to be another 5 years or more before issue 1 comes out, I might go, might want to kick it into gear there. But a year, you know,
Right.
like, it's worth putting in another year to get something that looks like 28 pages of that, I think, you know.
Yeah, once issue 1 is out, we'll be looking at it another way, because we'll have a finished comic, like a full finished comic, and
Yeah.
you know, people will really get be able to see the concept kind of realize it just, you know, all right, yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be very, very disappointed that number 2 isn't coming out like a month later. But
Yeah.
but you know, look, you know, our message is that you know, we're championing the day job guys that are out here, and you know,
Yeah.
we've been interviewing people like us, but you know, we've also interviewed some full time guys, you know, and you know,
Mhm.
you know, they have some complaints too, because you know,
Hmm.
it's a tough market. You know, imagine paying your rent, you know, every month, you
Yeah.
know.
Oh, God.
Ugh.
So, you know, the good news is,
Plus,
you
they
know,
miss driving forklifts. So.
right, and mouths to feed, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. I did see. I forget the guy's name. One of your episodes I was watching, a guy was talking about making a living full time off it, and I was thinking about that. That's scary, you know, to have to try to rely off commissions.
I was read, you know, and you could be Jack Kirby, right? I was.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. There's a lot of stress. I was reading the Marvel book, and you know, when Jack Kirby had like his third kid, you know, he had to go into Stan Lee with hat in hand, and you
Mm-hmm.
know, he'd say, "Look, you know, I need to make more." You know,
Yeah.
you know, and so then they're like, you know, they're like, "Well, we're not going to pay you more. You got to have to do another book a month." you know.
Clean the bathrooms, kid.
Right, so now you could do Captain America and Fantastic Four and Thor all at the same time, you know, and because now
There
you have
you
your
go. This is
kid
Jack
now.
Kirby.
Yeah, so imagine the stress of that, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
so you know, we have a different set of problems nowadays, but you know, um, once we have a product in hand and it starts getting around, maybe we start getting some reviews, then it's going to do what it's going to do. And however
Yeah.
many copies it's going to sell, that will be our kind of like, you know, marker. All right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you know, every once in a while something takes off. I don't think, you know, we're going to like, you know, break any records or anything, but um,
There's always the dream,
there's
though.
always a dream. I mean, you know, if it did sell like so many copies that Kurt could just like double up his inking, that would be great. That would be
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. But you know, you would need to really see that kind of income, and you know,
Yeah.
I think more it would really just expand our overall efforts, you know, which is our
Mm-hmm.
podcast, a Substack, you know, Kurt's those side projects, you know, just plugging it all together. You know, so I think that's the intention. And, you know, at the end of the day, we want to be happy. We want to have smiles on our
Yeah.
face, right? Like, you know, we can't do, you know, even if somebody said tomorrow, hey, would you like to, you know, do a Marvel comic tomorrow? You know, we wouldn't be able to do it. You know, it's not, it's,
Yeah.
so you know, let's all be realistic, and everybody else out there, you know, find yourself. You know, maybe if you're
Mm-hmm.
young and you want to do full time and you work up to it and you're good and fast and you know and you're willing to put up with the stress and the travel and all that, then go for it, live your dream. But you know, we you know are kind of on this level where we're meeting a lot of other like-minded creators, and they all saying the same thing over and over: is that I'm gonna do this till the day I die. I don't care if I make $1 million. You know,
Yep.
you know,
It.
this makes life fun for me. You know,
Yeah. To be able to tell stories in this format, like
entertain people, and
when I break it down, I'm like, I'm so happy I have the ability to do this. Like,
yeah,
just have some stupid idea in my head. Like, I'll think of the title of a story and be able to, in a few months, have a comic out that I made
Yeah,
out
so
of
that's
it.
cool.
15 people might enjoy it, but there is something in the act of creation. You know, I've told people
Absolutely.
sitting in a studio drawing or painting, just the act of it, even if your painting or drawing sucks at the end of it, don't worry about the end of it. The act of doing it
yeah,
is a
Yep.
form of zen.
yeah.
Like I don't worry about if I'm going to pay my electricity bill while I'm in the studio working on something. My brain shuts off all the BS. It's fantastic and a privilege
Yeah,
to be able
we're
to do that stuff.
worshiping. We're all worshiping an art form, but we're
Mm-hmm.
also expressing ourselves. And you know, I'm looking at your output here on these great colorful pages, like you know, bold inks, bold ideas. Like you know, anytime you come up with something, you have your avenue where you could you know put it out. And you know, you say you're reaching 15 people. Well, you got to remember that's only when you're alive now, right? These books are going to be around. These books are going to be kicking around. You know,
Yeah,
I collect records. I know like sometimes you find something from a bygone era,
yeah,
and then all of a sudden becomes your favorite thing in the world. You know, you could have a cult following like 100 years from now. I never know. Um, and you know, and the point is, you know, to make the art for art's sake.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
and I think you know I think that maybe that's where we all agree you
Mm-hmm.
know that we
All right, well, let's bring this. We got to bring this to a close.
All right.
You know, we are definitely uh, just what an amazing way to start the year, interview wise. Aric, thank you so much for taking the time, sending us your books.
Absolutely.
You know, as I always
Likewise.
say, this is your first interview, so you know we don't want to be we do not want to come up as like a one or done. You know, check you off the list. We definitely want to check back in with you.
That'd be
We
fantastic.
also expect that in kind. You know, we want
Mm-hmm.
you to be able to keep checking in with us. You know, and
Yeah.
say, hey, what's going on and everything.
Let me
You know,
get
and we could do
something
this.
going, and you guys might be the first people I call to talk to.
Okay, yeah, because you do have you said an issue 3. We're working on an issue 3 of our Turbo teaser. So it looks like those two things are going to meet, and then that's going to where we're going to come back together. So I'm super excited about it. Before Jake and I close out the episode, Aric, go ahead and give us all the places where people can find you, and whatever you want to say in closing.
Sure. Like I said at the beginning, I just want to thank you guys again for having me on here. This has been a really fun discussion. You can find me on Instagram at space.fart. There is my Substack. So that's at www.spacefart.substack.com. And that's some comics, some writing. I plan to do a lot more writing. I'm going to do some comic reviews.
I see you got reviews. You got it all here. I just subscribed, so that's just Space Fart on Substack.
Sweet. And it's free. Totally free.
Right.
I love Space Fart. I love Substack. I think it's a really great platform.
Yeah, people I did too.
But that's the main two places to find me. And then on those, you can find links to my shop to buy the comic book and stuff. That's it. But thanks again, guys, for having me. I really enjoyed this. And I'm really enjoying your work.
That's it, guys. It's an instant classic, Space Fart. And is this supposed to look like Rob Halford, or is that just me?
That's funny. I have not heard Rob Halford yet. No, it's just a guy.
Okay.
I just made him up. But I get people asking if it's Trump.
Okay.
Is it Rafferty? Is it who's the other one? Christie. I'm like, no, it's just a guy.
Okay. Okay. So the cool painted cover here.
Yeah.
So that's it, guys. Find Aric on Space Fart, and don't worry about what it is on each platform. Just put it in Google, right?
Yeah.
Put it in Google. Just put Space Fart in Google. I'm sure it's the #1 hit.
It'll come up.
All right, so folks can check out our other series. We have Comics That Influence, where we do flip throughs, and of course our flagship, The Making of Turbo Pit Fighter, live every Sunday on YouTube and Instagram. To Aric, I want to say thanks one more time, Aric Calfee, and then Kurt. We will see you next week, and folks, thanks for tuning in. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.